right, here I am at Muse Beauty Pro. Woohoo! There's the lovely Celeste.
Hello. Hello, my friends. Today we are in San Francisco. We are at Muse Beauty Pro with the amazing Alphonse Wiebelt. He is a renowned makeup artist. This is some of Alphonse's work. Isn't it gorgeous? And he trained actually under Kevyn Aucoin. He is one of the founders of Muse Beauty Pro. And today we're going to be talking about the brand new Grande Pro No. 3 by Viseart. So we're going to do a lot of things during this video. He did this amazing eye look on me, and we took it kind of from day to play or night or whatever you do when you put on a more fun look. Maybe it's your morning. And we will have that later on in the video. And what's really cool is that he's giving us makeup tips along the way about how to best apply your eyeshadow, and gives me some tips about how to deal with a bit of a more deep set hooded eye and a bit of more aging eyelid since I'm now 52. So I'd love to, so good. So I would love to kind of get the rundown on this palette.
Sure.
I know many of our viewers are probably familiar with the Grande Pro 1 and 2, but maybe we could touch upon those also, absolutely. And then about this amazingness that just came out.
Well, with Viseart in particular, Anastasia and I worked very closely together in the very beginning of coming up with the concept of the Grande Pro palettes. The Viseart is a brand that has such a cult following because of how creamy and buttery and how color true the pigments are. Mm-hmm. It really has been a product that, as a makeup artist, I've used for over 20 years. It really is quite a spectacular product. But with that being said, selfishly, I said, well, you know, it's like, well, can't we just get like one big palette of everything we need in one? I said, maybe we do it like we do with books, you know, a series or a trilogy. So really excited that this year we bring out the final installation, or the final of the trilogy, and that is Grande Pro 3, which is nice. So Grande Pro 1, when we launched that 2 years ago, the concept here is your basic fundamentals. All the basic colors that you would need as a makeup artist or a makeup enthusiast to work with shades that are just the beautiful rich pigments, from whether you're in your summer shade or your winter shade, if you get a little color in the summer, or if you're changing your wardrobe from neutrals to warms to cools. Mm-hmm. And so we find that makeup artists today, so many makeup artists, whether they're on TV, doing film, fashion, backstage, bridal, this has become like one of their #1 staples, which is really amazing. The Grande Pro 2, which we launched last year, that was years in the making. I know the chemist and I were like going back and forth, and it was really tough because we were working with new pigment technologies and new texture technologies. So where you have like beautiful shimmers that work from holograms to, yes, glitter, to micro size, to duochromes. And it was just trying to capture, well, texture in various forms. And that was really a lot of fun to do. So we said, okay, fine, if you have your mattes, and then you have your textures, well, what else could you need?
Oh, I travel with these two. This is just perfect. And if you haven't ever used a Viseart matte, when I got my first, you know, the 01 Neutral Mattes palette, it was a life changer. It's like, oh, wow, this is how mattes should work. And they blend together. You can mix them different. I mean, they're amazing. So when this came out, and then when this one came out, I was like, hey, I've got pretty much everything I need here. So I've been loving these. And they're compact. They're not, I mean, the neat big packaging is cool, but then when you have to go somewhere, it's like,
you just can take it, fold it up.
Yes.
Exactly, folds it really easily, like a little slim book. This year, obviously just as of now, we're now launching the Grande Pro Volume 3. And this one really is a lot of fun because we like to say it's a box of color. Mm-hmm. The team and I really worked very closely, especially the Viseart team and Anastasia. There were certain key shades that she wanted, that they really wanted to kind of revolve around. Mm-hmm. And one of the shades that she said was one of the very first ones was the teal. Teal's a very hard shade to create, to get that real rich pigment. Mm-hmm. Anything in your blues are really hard. So if it's your purples, your blues, I'm sure many of you, when you go to buy shadows and it looks really pretty and you go to put it on, sometimes you don't get that payoff. That's why these are pigment palettes. Mm-hmm. So you have about 70% of iron oxides and pigments in these shades to really get the rich payoff that, well, what you see is what you get. That's what we want. But this palette here in particular was just really, it's a beautiful box of color. And we were talking earlier, it could be like your accessories. Mm-hmm. As a makeup enthusiast, you're gonna have a field day because you're gonna try to put all 30 shades on at once. I know you, especially you back there, Celeste.
There's Celeste.
Hello.
And then some of you as well would look at this and say, well, I barely know what to do with 2 shadows. What am I going to do with 30? Well, that's what's great about Viseart, because whether you have just the edit palettes or you have just the traditional 12 pan palettes, that might be your entire wardrobe. This may not be for you, but if you love makeup and you love to play, this is probably definitely a collector's piece.
Well, I think it's perfect because when I did travel with these two, I was telling Alphonse I often would throw in, a Petite Pro or my editorial brights or something just for that extra oomph when I wanted to really, kind of get things a little bit more colorful. So this is a perfect match for it, and I've been playing with them and really loving them. And also, you get a lot of product in these palettes. These are 2 grams each. To put it in perspective, a lot of the other palettes out there, it might be 3/4 of a gram or less sometimes.
Right.
So I know they're more of an investment up front, but they will last an enthusiast
A very long time, exactly.
Yes.
Matter of fact, we just started offering some. It was really hard to do, but we picked 50 of the top individual shades that makeup artists and enthusiasts are often running through, like that light peach, the light beige shade. And so we have those available, but it takes a long time for one person to really go and hit what we call hit pan.
Right.
It takes a long time.
I know, I think in my neutral mattes, the upper left ones
Always.
there, those are the ones that, yes, the singles are available now, so that's
So
good.
it's good. If you are hitting pan on that one shade, exactly, we do have those available too.
So fantastic.
Cool.
And these all do pop out also.
Yep.
So if you want to rearrange them, put them in another palette or something like that. Now, one question I have for you is, can we talk about the layout of the palette? Because I know that the one was significantly different type of layout than the 2.
Yes, that's correct. The ones pretty much are tonal and within a row. So as you can see here, you pretty much have one shade that's basically drives the entire palette, so you can create almost like a natural shade, a natural nuance of that hue. Whereas your 2, it's basically different textures in each column. So for 3, we went back to the column layout, and it really works with, once again, a primary shade that would eventually go into a secondary, or what we call primary, secondary, and a tertiary shade. So it's much like the color wheel. Red, yellow, and blue make up really every color that we see. And when you start mixing like red and blue, you're going to get purple. Now, if you want to make eggplant or beautiful aubergine, then you have to mix in more blue, more black, and leave that to the artist. Pretty much this palette gives you all of your colors that you need. That really can take you from really something more experimental to something really classic and beautiful.
If you're following fashion, you'll see that more and more color is becoming a trend. And I know when you look at this, it might look scary, but you can ease into color and look more modern and more up to date. You can do a completely neutral eye if you like those browns, or you're just doing a gray, or whatever you're doing. And then you can actually just take a little bit and just put it on the side of your lid, or underneath this eyeliner. Actually, you tell them, because you're the you're the god of this. So.
No, it's all good. Every 7 years, when the trends come back into play, we hear it often, especially for this fall going to spring, summer. Right now on the runways, they're showing a lot of color. And it's really fun, it's fresh, it's beautiful. But let's be realistic, not everyone might be prepared to buy a fuchsia jumpsuit or a gold lame jumpsuit, what have you, but you might want to play with color. Right now there's so much neon going on, and it's great for editorial. But what happens is that the everyday person who wants to play with color, they will take it and incorporate it into an accessory. So like what we did on you, we just did a little pop of the neon orange across the lid. We burnished it with a little bit of the aubergine in the outer corner, and automatically gives you a little bit more color play without it basically taking over you or your features. And that's a really fun way. Same thing with lip gloss. You'll often see people where, they may not be comfortable with like so much of this color in their wardrobe, but a little bit of a gloss just gives you a little touch of color. So I think that's the best way to kind of modernize your makeup, and most importantly, you have to feel comfortable in it. Just because it's a trend does not mean that you have to wear it, but there's nothing wrong with playing.
Oh, tell them really quickly about the pencils that you created, because I've been using them pretty much exclusively since I got them.
Oh, that's great, thank you. With the Eason pencils, we basically worked really hard on creating a formula that was creamy, so went on very easily, didn't drag, but at the same time, you had about maybe 20 to 25 seconds play time before it sets. And that's really important because you want your product to set so that it doesn't move. What we often hear, and you and I were talking earlier, is like you put eyeliner on the top and the next thing you know, it starts to move to the bottom of the eye. That's not what very modern, that's not what women want. So you want to be able to apply it, but at the same time you want to stay put and not look dry.
Yes.
That was what was really important with the lips. I didn't want to create this indelible, long wearing, only apply it once throughout the day lip liner. We wanted something that created a little bit of a hue, a shade, and wore really beautifully, that you could wear it all over with a little gloss, or wear it with your favorite lipstick.
Oh, and you can use any of the pencils anywhere in your face. So, you know, if you feel like using the lip pencil in your eyes, you certainly can. Or
Sure.
vice versa, so they're safe everywhere.
That's great.
You stock what you use in your kits.
Yes.
You don't just stock the latest whatever trending thing out there.
Sure. Really, I mean, Muse Beauty started as a platform for my business partners and I to do what we love to do. When it comes to working with a product, we have to use it, trust it, and if it doesn't work for us, we're not going to stand behind the product. We won't carry it on our website. So everything that we use, either we're a part of development of it, we work very closely with the brands, or it's just one of those tried and true products. And that's really how the assortment of products have really evolved with our company.
We're going to get started now on my eye look using the Grande Pro 3, and Alphonse is going to give us hints and tips along the way, some best practices for applying your eyeshadow and doing your whole eye look, and he's especially going to focus in for me because I have more of a hooded lid and a bit more of a mature eyelid.
First, we're going to start with the Viseart Seamless Shadow Primer. A primer is great to use, especially if you find that you have long days and if you find that your eyelids get oily or your makeup begins to crease. This will actually help to adhere the product to the lid and keep it looking very soft and fresh. I'm working with a synthetic brush and we're just going to apply it across the eye. What I really like about the Seamless Shadow Primer is that it has no color. So because it's devoid of iron oxides, it works on all skin tones and it doesn't dry and look thick. Great.
I use a primer every time I put my eyeshadow on.
A little security is good.
Yes, well, and it'll look the same 12 hours later, unless you go swimming or something. But even then, I've gotten it wet before. It's like, wow.
And it stays put.
Yeah.
All right, great. Next I'm gonna do is lay down a base shade. I'm gonna mix a little bit. I think what's great about the Grande Pro 3 is that you actually have a box of color to play with, which is really nice. So from here, I'm gonna break it down to the warm tones or the cool tones. You can really do whichever you would like. You can even mix the two together. Just know that sometimes when you're mixing shades like your blues and your oranges, that they're opposite in color theory, so they can actually tend to almost neutralize each other out. So if you want to keep it really safe, especially for every day, stick within the warms or stick within the cools. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little bit of these two shades here. And I'm mixing these two shades in particular because I don't want it too light and I don't want it too dark. And for her level of skin tone, this will be perfect. So I'm going to start by using a soft goat hair brush. And I'm just going to generously press the color over the entire eye.
So you're pressing, you're not wiping at all.
Correct. I think there's techniques where we see people dusting makeup. And I always say, I want you to be a little bit more intentional. I say, save the dusting and the sweeping for housekeeping. This will help to keep the makeup on longer. And as you see, I'm using the side of the brush head, and I'm just pressing, pressing, pressing. If you find that you do have a deeper set eye or a little bit more of a hooded eye, give yourself an extra shot right in the crease where your shadow tends to sometimes separate. Same thing on this side of the eye. Just press, press, press. I usually do about 2 applications per eye.
So far better to build up with less.
Correct. I think a mistake that a lot of people do is they put a lot on their brush and you get a lot of fallout under the eye. That also happens when the technique you're rushing and you're dusting your makeup on. You will find that you will have a little bit more, you'll have a little more mess to clean up afterwards. This is probably one of the most important steps when it comes to application to ensure the longevity. How you lay down your initial shade is going to essentially create the canvas, how everything else blends. Next, we're going to go into shaping the eye. And I'm going to work with a brush that's a little bit more like a traditional watercolor brush. This is made of a really soft hair. And what you're doing, when you look at yourself in the mirror, put your chin up, head back a little bit, yep. And look, you want to be able to look straight down into the mirror. And then if you need to, lift your arch of your eyebrow. You're essentially looking for the bone. We all have that natural shape. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is take the tip of the brush and go into this beautiful shade here. It's almost like a soft terracotta. And I'm just applying the color to the actual tip of the brush. Next, head back a little for me, good. I'm gonna raise the arch of the eyebrow. And then what you wanna do is actually feel your bone through the brush. Can you feel how I'm just almost bouncing that right on that natural socket? By following your natural shape, this is gonna complement who you are and make it more unique to your facial structure. Now, I'm moving the brush back and forth in a light windshield wiper motion. And notice that there is very little pressure on the brush because you just want to initially set up the shape. Now, a mistake here is that we generally tend to go really dark. Go with more of a medium hue to start. And you want to keep diffusing or blending so you don't see where the color begins or ends. Now, when you look straight into the camera, you want to be able to see a little bit of a natural lightness across the lash line. So what you're beginning to do is to build definition. Now, I'm going to go back and do the next eye.
Now that we have the base down, how do you recommend people with more of a deep set or a bit of a hooded eye like I have move forward to achieve the nicest look?
Sure, okay. Well, the very first thing I would do is to make sure that you concentrate and keep the lid light. So by doing that, let's switch to a really soft textured brush. This is the W21. This one's made of sable. A sable hair brush is actually going to pick up more product and give you fuller coverage. So let's keep that lid a little either lighter or brighter in your coloration.
Good, I'm doing it right. I always like to put shimmers on the eyelids and light colors.
That's a great time to play with a little bit of texture, or if you want to play with color, that's where you'd want everything else. Because when you do your contouring in the eye, that's almost to help that area recede. So keeping light and bright is going to bring a feature forward.
Make myself have more lid than I do.
So what I'm going to do here is to play with, I'm actually going to go into this vibrant yellow. This is going to be gorgeous with the green eyes. I'm going to pick up the hue, and then I'm going to once again lift and keep that color first along the base of the lash line. And just press the color across the lid. Don't be afraid to play with a little bit of a bright, clear color. It's a little more youthful, it's a little more fresh, and it's a little more fun.
I think eyeshadow is so much fun. Makes me happy every day when I put it on, even if I'm not seeing anyone.
I always like to use the analogy when you keep your lid a little bit on the lighter, brighter side. I'll just look into the camera. It's like the analogy of painting your room a fresh color white. It's going to look larger. I always like to say after a Thanksgiving meal, I don't want to be wearing white. I want to wear something dark. So that's going to give the illusion of something more fresh, something more vibrant, makes the lid look lighter.
And still that pressing technique rather than wiping.
Absolutely. Press everything with intention. I understand that in the morning sometimes we're lucky to have 5 minutes to get dressed and out the house with makeup. And some of us might have the luxury of a little bit more time. But whatever time you are spending on your makeup, give yourself the correct amount of time. So if you need to close that door, cup of coffee, and give yourself 15 minutes, just take the time to do it right for yourself. Therefore, you're not worrying about throughout the day, how does my makeup wear? How's it looking? Is it creasing? Get it right the first time, and it'll make it a lot easier for you. It's kind of if you look good, you feel good. Now I'm going to go back to a larger, softer brush. This is the G34, and it's basically just a round dome. There's nothing on it. And what I'm going to do with this brush, look down for me. I'm going to use this as my diffuser to blend. I mentioned earlier we don't want to see where colors begin or end for this type of look. We all rush, and next thing you know, the corners look a little too sharp. We don't want the makeup wearing us. We want it to basically accentuate us. So I'm just going to diffuse out the inner corner.
If you make a mistake and you do get that harsher line here, just blend away, or is there anything else that you can do, like a little powder, or what do you recommend?
Well, if you go to, let's say, your contour shade, and you go to put that on the eye and it grabs and it gets really hard, what that's telling you is that maybe you rushed or you missed a spot with your initial base shadow. So that's why I say I like to do 2 good steps to make sure you set that first so it doesn't grab it.
Okay.
If it does grab it, then I would say basically take a finishing sponge, like one of these that we use, and buff it out.
Okay.
If you try to set it or put more on top of it, you're just going to have more makeup on one side than the other. So I would say buff it out.
That'd be great.
Yeah, when in doubt, blend it out, right? That's always the best way to go. So I'm just going to diffuse. I like to blend, blend, blend. Now if you see at the corners how I blend upward. I'm blending up because we don't want to go with gravity. Naturally, as gravity takes hold, everything begins to move a little bit south, and what we want to do is keep everything going upward. So blend upward so you don't drag your eye makeup down. So from here, let's go into creating a little bit more shape to the eye. We basically created a contour, a lid. Now we have to give the illusion that the eye has some form of depth. So I'm going to do that by going back to the W21 small little saber brush. This is probably one of my favorite brushes because I find it so universal. And now I'm going to go into a deep shade. We're going to go into, as I said, the warm shades, kind of playing off the whole fall palette. Let's go with this beautiful shade here. I'm going to start by very traditionally just applying it to the outer corner of the lid. And I'm going to go as high up just to where the socket bone begins. And as you can see, I'm being very intentional by pressing to create the shape. Working with the deeper matte shade, it's going to make this part of the eye recede. Now I'm beginning just to lightly diffuse, like blend down onto the color that we had on the lid. Perfect. And then we'll blend, but I'm not going to get carried away with that right now. Let's go do the other eye. Perfect. So as you can see, it's actually almost like more of a rustic brown shade to the outer corner of the eyelid. And then once again, I'm going to go back to a clean brush and just lightly diffuse by blending up into the contour.
Do you tend to highlight under the brow bone later, or do you kind of let things be? I found that, I know when I was younger, I used to use something more shimmery up there. And now that looks horrendous.
I think what we did is basically by working with the first initial shade, I kind of created a hue that was almost like 2 shades lighter than your skin tone, just a little bit warmer. That was my base shadow on top of the shadow primer. By putting that up to under the eyebrow, that's going to kind of almost let it blend and give you a little bit of that highlight. If you're going out and you want to create a little bit of a shimmer, I would say, you know, there's a time where in our life when you can wear something that's a little bit more heavily shimmered, and there's a time where you maybe want to go a little bit more with a satin finish. A satin finish is going to actually give you a softer finish that looks like healthy skin, and it's just going to lighten and lift the brow. So a satin finish is nice. The next thing that's really important, I often see people pick up their first light shadow on their brush and they go and they blend their makeup with another shadow. I always suggest blend with nothing more than a clean brush. Because then you create a secondary and a tertiary shade, and then they never match. So this just kind of builds that color really beautifully. And I do blend a lot. So now we're going to go into add a little bit of definition along the base of the lash line. A lot of times there's so many different techniques when it comes to eyeliner. People always thinking, well, do I want to do a wing? Do I want to do a smudgy eye, a black eye? A lot of times we think about what is the purpose of eyeliner. 1, to create depth to the base of your lash, to make the lashes look longer, so they're coming from somewhere deeper. And 2, to create a little contrast against the white of the eyes. So especially when you have a little loss of elasticity and you find that basically you put eyeliner on and then your lid disappears. Some of you probably just said, oh yes, I know what that happens. We today are trying to keep the lid open and bright and fresh. So I'm going to use a very creamy eyeliner. This is the new Esom pencil. This is a shade called Aubergine, which is a beautiful color. It's almost like that, well, it's an aubergine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a square edged little synthetic brush. And what you can do is take your square brush, pick up your color this way, just going back and forth, and let your brush do all the work for you.
These are the new Esom liners. They're fabulous.
They got about 20 seconds of playtime and then they really set and they don't move.
Oh, they don't move.
So if you look straight on, chin up for me. So once again, you want to look down at yourself in the mirror. And then what we're going to do is just gently touch, 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 right at the base of the lash line. And by using a square edge brush, you don't have to have a steady hand. So I'm basically just touching right into the bed of the lashes. So just let that brush tip just do all the work. Just let it gently press right along the base of your roots.
I find this makes such a difference. If I don't have time for anything else, I always do that tight line.
And I always say line the lashes from where they begin to where they end. People often ask, do you just do 3/4? Do you do just halfway? And as you can see, just there in itself, it just creates a little bit of depth, makes the lashes, once you put mascara on, look thicker and fuller. Now we'll do both sides. So as we can see, we went ahead and just basically pressed the eyeliner on, the eyeliner pencil right into the base of the lash line. And a good question came up about wings. How do I feel about wings? And I said, I think everyone can wear a wing. It just gives the eye a little lift, but it depends on what you're doing from your style and what personally feels right for you. I kept this really classic, just creating a little bit of base to the lash line. From here, now I'm gonna go into an aubergine pigment, and I'm gonna work with a little round scallop shaped brush. And I'm gonna go ahead and just lightly, just diffuse. So it's not a hard line, but I'm not gonna smudge it heavily because I don't wanna take up all of the lid space with eyeshadow. I hear all the time, women are like, oh, I put my eyeliner on and then it basically looks like a hard line. So let's just diffuse, soften. The makeup artist always mix mediums, a cream medium, a powder medium, or a liquid medium and a powder medium. And when I talk about mediums, meaning a pencil and a shadow, or a liquid liner and a shadow.
And when I took the class from Deborah, Muse Beauty Pro has amazing classes, by the way. She used the liner just as much as the shadow for the smoky eye. And it was amazing how much it was based, really on that, even the shape for the individual eye, on how the liner worked,
Right, closer. So once again, just go through and just lightly diffuse along this lash line. So obviously this technique here can be used with a multitude of colors. If you did a black liner, then you did a soft gray, you could play with a little bit of shimmer, but right now we're playing with the matte texture on the eyes. Okay. Now I think the question you had earlier was, what do we do to line the bottom of the eye?
Yes.
And you had a really great question was, when you feel that when you put a lot of shadow on the bottom of the eye, it becomes heavy or it moves, what was it?
I feel like it just drags the look of my eye down. It's not as youthful unless I put a lot of false eyelashes up to kind of help it pull with the wing. But yeah, if I put too much, if I go further than here,
it's going to basically, it looks heavy.
Yes.
A good little rule of thumb, if you're trying to avoid that type of effect, is have the eyeliner on the bottom of the eye softer than the liner on the top. Because sometimes when you put a lot, it can be like 2 10-pound weights pulling everything down. So let's keep it softer. And then what's really important is how do you keep it in place? So I'm not going to do a liquid on the bottom. We're not going to do a pencil on the bottom. We're just going to do a powder. But we have to keep that powder in place. So I'm going to use what we call our secret sauce. Once again, I'm going to work with the square liner brush that we used before with the cream eyeliner. And now I'm going to work with a product. It's called the Pro Mixing Medium. Now this is a great product because this you can use with any powder medium and it basically will make it waterproof. It'll set it and keep it in place. The trick is you need very little bit.
and you don't drop it onto your eyeshadow directly.
Nope. You put it a little bit onto the tip of the brush, and you're not trying to make it, you do not want to saturate. It doesn't need to be, just be lightly damp. And now I'm going to go back into the aubergine shade that I used just to diffuse the top. And I'm just going to lightly press right into the bed of the lash line. Now I'm going right above the lashes because the lashes will kind of get in the way to create even a softer look. And I like to connect the two corners. That automatically gives the eye just a little bit of an upward lift.
That mixing medium is great. You can make your own eyeliner. It stays on.
It's great from the top as well.
Any color.
Or the bottom. So once again, just starting at the outer corner, working our way in. And then from there, then the very next step is basically to diffuse. So now I'm going to do is take the S31. It's almost what they call like a little eraser style pencil smudger brush. Look up for me. And I'm just going to lightly diffuse along the bottom.
Then Alphonse isn't saying so, but he did design this whole brush line.
I do love makeup brushes. I've been designing makeup brushes for easily over 25 years for various companies. And for us, eSIM is a brush line that I like to say that we created out of selfish needs. What we need as makeup artists. And what we need is just diversity in size, shape, and hair. Whereas for the everyday woman, you know, once she knows that she needs small brushes for the eye or medium or large brushes for the eye, she can get away with just 4 to 5 brushes. Mm-hmm. But for us, we just need them all.
Everyone, right?
We need them all, exactly. So now that that's been blended and diffused, look up for me. We're ready to go to mascara. So now we have, which is what I would consider a beautiful fall eye. It complements, one, the color of her eye, two, the placement of color complements the shape of your eye. You see your lashes, and I think the whole idea is it's fun to play with makeup, and yes, you want to wear the makeup, but you want people to look into your eyes and your beautiful green eyes. So these colors are the opposite in color theory, so they make your eyes look even greener, which is really beautiful. And I think it would go with anything from black into a fall wardrobe beautifully. Now, if you want to take it and bump it up, we could do that quickly with just 2 steps.
Oh, yes.
All right, perfect. I'm pretty much going to stick with working with the W21. It's probably the most universal brush. And what I'm going to do first is go into this neon orange. Now, I think what's really crazy right now is that we're seeing fashion go to extreme levels with makeup. And right now there's a strong influence in neon. And we probably, some of us probably remember it from the 90s.
Oh, yes.
And it was really fun then, and now we couldn't fathom putting it on. But as I said earlier, a bright color will bring a feature forward. So let's just put a little pop and play with these colors, this bright orange, and we're going to play with this toward the lid.
You can do this with any color when you have a neutral base going, right?
Absolutely. When you have a neutral base, if I was doing something more like the greens on you, I could have done this with the chartreuse. If I was playing with more of the reds and plums, I would have done this more maybe with the bright fuchsia that's in there. And now there's really next to nothing on my brush. I'm just lightly blending in with a little bit of that yellow shade that we had on earlier. And then to create a little bit more drama, you take a look there. That looks great. Just a little bright pop of that orange is great. Now to grab a little bit more drama, I'm going to go back into the deep aubergine shade that we used. So we used this shade a little bit to smudge along the top of the eyeliner, and we used it for your bottom. But now using it with a sable brush, I can create a lot more depth at the outer corner. So this allows you easily to go from, you know, we play around here and say, you know, from day to play. Depends on what your mood and where you're going, what the occasion is, and how much time you have. So now you can see, just by pressing that deep aubergine with the sable brush, how it's building so much more depth. Close. Good. I'm just going to diffuse where the 2 colors meet.
Amazing how quickly you can change the look.
Mm-hmm. A good trick is to really start with less. Putting less on, it's easier to build than it is to start with a lot, and then you don't know where to do with it once it's on the eye, because you have nowhere else to go with it.
Always easier to add than to take away.
Absolutely. Okay, now I'm just going to blend those, and we are set. So basically, we just kind of just blend it, diffuse where the neon meets with the aubergine in the outer corner, and then from there, just touch up with a little bit more mascara. And now the final touch, I'm going to take this vibrant yellow that we used, right? That was on across the lid. Look up for me. And just to kind of diffuse and tie it together, just add a little bit of brightness to the inner corner of the eye. I think the trend of what we've been seeing for so long has been putting something shimmery there. When it comes to playing with texture, you can also work with matte hues and go with the light and dark. And this will brighten, highlight, and just create a little space. It doesn't have to be glitter.
And for more mature eye, I mean, I find that the matte is really nice using the satin, and then my take on the glitters is I love them. I just keep them on this part of my lid, on my actual lid. I do not bring them up because on me, I just don't think that looks the greatest. I still think you can wear glitter no matter how old you are.
Oh, exactly. I think it's about your style and your confidence and what works best for you. But when someone's saying to me, oh, I really want to make this disappear or make that disappear, don't put glitter on top of something that you want to disappear. All right? Well, great. Thank you.
Thank you. I love it.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much, Alphonse, and thank you to the whole Muse Beauty Pro team for having me here today and sharing your amazing knowledge, giving me this fabulous look. I don't think I ever want to wash my face again.
Very sweet.
And I'm sure the viewers will appreciate all of the great hints and tips on the application. Just so everyone knows, the Grande Pro 3 is exclusively available here at Muse Beauty Pro, along with really all the Viseart products are also here, along with a lot of other fun stuff, including the brushes and liners and things that we use throughout this applications. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Thank you.
Now I don't only just want to live with you, I want you to be with me every moment of my day.